everyone. Welcome to week 2. Today we're going to look at Unit 6, which is all about entertaining a client. Before we start with the textbook, we're going to talk a little bit about your midterm exam. For your midterm speaking exam, you will have a job interview. So, how can we prepare for a job interview? Today we're going to have a little quiz, just for fun. And this quiz is designed to give you some useful tips to prepare you for your exam and for your future job interviews. So let's go ahead and take a look at our job interview quiz. Number 1. And if you have a paper, you can write your answers down here. What is the average number of people who apply for a job? Is it A, 58? B, 88, C, 118, or D, 138? How much competition do you have in your job? The answer is 138. 138 people will compete with you for one job position. So you really need to nail that job interview to get a good chance of landing the job. Number 2. How many people will get a job interview? So 138 sent in their resumes and they're hoping to land the interview. But how many will actually get to speak with someone who is in charge of hiring for this position? Is it A, 10%, B, 20%, C, 30%, or D, 40%? The answer is C, 30%. So just under a third of applicants will get an interview. But if you consider that 138 applied to begin with, that's still a lot of people who are going to be waiting to interview. And with every interview, there's another chance that someone will promote themselves really well or just have some chemistry that clicks with a hiring manager. So what can we do to make ourselves stand out? That's the big question. All right, next one. What is the average time an interviewer will look at a resume? You spent hours making your resume and writing the perfect cover letter, but how much does it really matter? Is it A, 5 to 7 seconds, B, 20 to 25 seconds, C, 2 minutes, or D, 5 minutes? Well, unfortunately, the answer is just 2 minutes. Usually they have a big pile of papers, and first they look at your education and your job experience. If you don't have the right degree, they'll just throw your paper in the recycling bin in the first 2 seconds. So for example, if they're looking for someone with an MBA and you only have a BA, they're not even going to bother looking at the rest of the paper. So your resume is really important. It's the key that opens the door to a job interview. Next question. How many resumes are rejected because of an unprofessional email address? And we can see one here, crazymonkey@gmail.com. Is it A, 26%, B, 46%, C, 76%, or D, 86%? Well, actually, it's 76%. That's a shocking number of people who use unprofessional email addresses when they apply for jobs. It's really easy to make a whole new account just for your work-related things. Choose an email that includes your name, that's easy to remember. For example, my email is sun.andrea@yahoo.com. Very simple, there aren't too many numbers, and it's very clear who it is. Next question. How many people will be rejected because they include a photo on their resume? In Korea, it's expected to include a photo on your resume. In fact, some jobs won't even accept a resume if it doesn't include a photo. In Western countries, this is considered very strange. Usually, we do not include photos in our resumes. And if someone requests a photo, it's considered a little bit of a breach of privacy. In the West, they really emphasize that people should not be hired based on their looks. So, if you include a photo on your resume for a job in a Western country, how many do you think will be rejected because of this photo? A, 18%, B, 28%, C, 58%, or D, 88%? The answer is 88%. When employers in the West get a resume with a photo, it seems a little unprofessional. It's almost as if you're applying to be an actor and you're auditioning for a part, or you want to be a model. It's considered very strange. Next, what are employers looking for? When they put a job ad, what do they want? A, multitasking skills, B, people skills, C, creative thinking, or D, all of the above. I'm sure you can guess that they definitely want everything. They want everything that they can get for the lowest price possible. So, when you apply for a job, you really need to promote all of your skills. Don't be afraid to talk about yourself in a positive way. I know it can seem weird, like you're bragging or boasting, but you really need to sell yourself to an employer in a job interview. Next, how many recruiters will look at a candidate's social media profile? And you can see examples of what kind of profiles they might look at, like Facebook, LinkedIn, well, not Skype, but you get the idea. A, 23%, B, 43%, C, 93%, or D, 99%? Well, in this day and age of modern media, 93% of recruiters will look at your social media profile. And it's surprising how many people keep their profiles public. And you can see a lot. Just from a name and maybe a location, it's very easy to look up a lot of information about you. And that can really cause a lot of problems. So, my advice is to create a strictly professional profile, let's say on LinkedIn, only for work. Keep your other accounts private, your Instagram, your Facebook, whatever. Lock your account so people cannot see it. Then, in your professional account, make sure you put professional photos, include your work experience, and in general, make yourself appealing to employers. Next, what is the average length of an interview? Ooh, and it looks very scary if you look at this photo. 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, or 60 minutes? Well, the average interview is about 40 minutes. 30 minutes, it's not too bad, but it's a little bit short. And 60 minutes is way too long. 40 minutes is a perfect amount of time to learn a little more about you and ask some questions. If your interview goes a little longer, that can be a good sign. It means that they're interested in asking more about what you do or hearing more about your previous experience. If you go through an interview too quickly, it could mean that they didn't really put a face to your name and you're just another number on their long list of candidates. So ideally, a 40-minute interview is just enough for you to make a good impression. Next, how soon do the bosses decide when to hire or whether or not to hire the candidate? The first 90 seconds, after 5 minutes, after 10 minutes, or after 15 minutes? The answer is in the first 90 seconds. Your first impression is really important. And before the conclusion of the interview, a boss or hiring manager already has a very clear impression of your level of maturity, your organization, and whether or not you seem like you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about. That first impression will guide their decision throughout the whole interview. So that's why it's very important to arrive on time, dress professionally, and research the job before you go for the interview. That way you can seem very confident and well experienced during your interview. Next question. Why was this candidate rejected? So take a look at his photo, and what do you think is the problem? A, inappropriately dressed. B, no eye contact. C, no knowledge of the company. And D, all of the above. Well, if I were a hiring manager, I would say all of the above. He's inappropriately dressed, I cannot see his eyes, and I can't know this for sure. Maybe he does know a little bit of the company. But now my first impression of this person is that he's a little bit immature. Maybe he likes to play around too much. And so I assume he must not know a lot about his industry. And so in my mind, in my impression, I believe that he has no knowledge of this company. And so he has been rejected. Next question. What else is important during an interview? A, the quality of your voice. B, your smile. C, firm handshake. And D, good posture. Well, they're all important, especially your sense of confidence. And your confidence will tie into all of these things. A lot of people are very nervous during a job interview, which is perfectly natural. But sometimes if you come across too serious or too uptight, it might turn away hiring managers. They're not only looking for experience or your education, they're also checking if you will match their work culture or if you seem like a good person to work with. If you seem like someone who is too strict or not comfortable enough in a team project, then they might reject you from the interview. Next question. What is the best time for an interview? A, 4 p.m. on a Monday. B, 10:30 a.m. on Tuesday. C, 1 p.m. on a Wednesday. Or D, 9 a.m. Friday. Now, some of these might be more appealing to you, but what about your hiring manager? What do you think is the time they would really like, or that would really increase your chances of succeeding your job interview? The answer is 10:30 a.m. Tuesday. This is right at the beginning of the day when people have a lot of energy, but they've had some time to settle into their workday. They have the highest level of energy and focus. And at the beginning of the week, they're more prepared to take on big tasks and they don't feel too tired yet. 4 p.m. on a Monday is the time when people are just waiting to go home. They are done with the work. They didn't want to go in to work on Monday anyway, and their focus is completely gone. So you're not going to make a very good impression on them at that time. Even if you do a really good job, they just aren't in the mood. See, 1 p.m. on a Wednesday. That's right after lunch. And right after lunch, you're still taking some time to get engaged in your work again. Maybe you're distracted because you're thinking about other things. You had a chat with someone in the office. So the hiring manager isn't necessarily fully engaged in your interview. And 9 a.m. on a Friday, well, Friday is the day that no one really thinks about work. Everyone wants to go home and they're planning their weekend. So don't schedule your interview on a Friday. That is the worst time you can pick, especially 4 p.m. on Friday. All right, next question. What is the most appropriate time to come before an interview? 5 to 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, 30 minutes to 40 minutes, or 1 to 2 hours? Whew, I hope you don't go 1 to 2 hours early because that's way too early. Just 10 to 15 minutes is enough time for you to settle in, take a deep breath, and mentally prepare for the interview. Actually, even though I suggest to come 10 to 15 minutes early, myself, when I went to job interviews, I usually got there 45 minutes early because I'm a very nervous person. And before the interview, I'd like to practice what I prepared and go through my notes and really make sure I was in the zone. I also liked to be the first person at the interview because I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted them to know that I was organized and I was punctual. So I always tried to get there very early. But 10 to 15 minutes is sufficient. You don't need to overkill it like I did. So, how do we know if your interview went well? There are four main signs you can look for. The first one, like I said before, is if your interview goes a little longer than you expect. It means that they want to know more and they're really interested in what you have to say. Next, you're asked about your availability. They want to know when you can join them. This is a really positive sign. It means that they're already starting to plan ways to include you in their work and integrate you into their schedule. That's fantastic. Next, the company future plans and projects are discussed. They're not just looking for someone to fill in a work gap right now, maybe a temporary position. They're thinking about your role in the grand scheme of things. They think that you have something useful to contribute to their larger, longer scale projects. And finally, the interviewer gives a specific date for getting back to you. When they pen you into their agenda, it means they're getting serious. And I think that is a fantastic sign. If they offer you a specific date to get in touch, it means that they really intend to get back to you. So many job interviews finish and nothing is said, and the hiring manager will just disappear without even a thank you letter. So if they schedule a definite appointment, that is really, really excellent. All right, so now that we've talked about job interviews and how to do a good impression in a job interview, let's talk about today's unit, entertaining. Now, imagine you already got the job. Now you're working in a company and maybe you're in a position in the sales department. When you work in sales or any other department, you might reach a point when you need to entertain a client or maybe talk to a potential business partner and try to win their favor. So, how can we entertain a client? And how can we invite people to join us in projects? Entertaining clients and important customers is very important in the business world. Why? And especially in sales, when you're talking to that really, really big customer that brings in a huge percentage of your monthly sales, you really, really want to make a good impression on them. So, we can say that it builds relationships, trust, and friendships, or in this case, a business partnership. And that's really important because, as they say, it's not what you know, but who you know that's really important. And making the right connections can really make a huge difference in your business. So, please take out your notebook. We're going to have our first question that I want you to think about yourself. Please ask yourself, what kinds of entertainment do you like, personally? Not in your work, just in your life. Make a really simple sentence like this. I really like and If you want, you can give an example. If you couldn't think of any ideas, there are some ideas here on the screen. Concerts, theater, sports game, movies, etc. Next, let's delve deeper into this question. If you are entertaining a client or VIP, what would you recommend? So, it might be a little different than what you personally like at home. So please write one simple sentence. I would recommend. Okay, hopefully you came up with some really good ideas. If you didn't know what to say, there are some examples on the screen. For example, eating at an expensive restaurant. I think that's probably the most common answer and the most commonly practiced in the business world. But there are some other things that you can do too. Now let's look in your textbook. Please open your textbook to page 52. Imagine you have to entertain a group of foreign business people. What activities would you choose? So please take out your notebook and write your answer. Please choose two options, and I'm going to show you a bunch of different things that you can choose from. So here we have historical sites, an opera, motor racing, tennis, a bar, wine tasting, golf game, a restaurant, the theater, horse racing, football games, and an art gallery. You can also include some details about where you are right now. So for example, if you're in Seoul taking this online class, maybe historical sites would be really interesting. But if you're like me and you're in Wonju, maybe there aren't very many historical sites to show. Or maybe they won't be as exciting. So think about where you are and choose carefully. Hopefully you finished making your choice. Hopefully it was a good one too. Now let's look at today's vocabulary. For today's vocabulary, we're going to talk about adjectives that form word partnerships. What does that mean? It means that some adjectives are kind of related to certain words. So take a look in your textbook and you can see some adjectives: convenient, cozy, efficient, exciting, local or regional, and reasonable. You might notice that cozy is spelt with an S. This is the British spelling of the word. We can also spell it with a Z or a Z. So don't be confused if you see these two spellings. All right, now let's take a look at the word choices: atmosphere, food, location, prices, service, and entertainment. Please take a moment to match the adjectives with their word partners. Let's check your answers. Number 1, this is a convenient location. We often say a convenient location. We also use the word convenient with time. A convenient time, a convenient location. Number 2, this cafe has a cozy atmosphere. The atmosphere or energy of a place can really influence the success of your business meeting. Number 3, this restaurant has very efficient service. Efficient service is fast and it's accurate. Number 4, this entertainment is really exciting. Hopefully you picked some good entertainment in the previous exercise. Number 5, the local or regional food is delicious. And 6, the market has reasonable prices. Reasonable prices, not expensive, not too cheap. The price feels good for the quality that you get. Okay, so now take a look at all 6 of these adjectives and their word partners. These are different factors that can be very important for a business meeting: a convenient location, cozy atmosphere, efficient service, exciting entertainment, delicious food, and reasonable prices. Now, in your notebook, I'd like you to think about taking your foreign visitor out for dinner, and think about your adjectives and their word partners. In your notebook, I want you to put them in order. Which one is the most important, which is number 1, and which is the least important, number 6? So, please write some sentences like this. The most important factor is cozy atmosphere, convenient location, blah, blah, blah. So go ahead, write your answers in your notebook. So you've decided which factors are the most important when you're hosting a foreign visitor. Now we're taking your foreign visitor out to dinner. You've had an amazing day entertaining them. Maybe you visited a museum or you took them to a historical site. There's one last thing you need to do, which is feed them a good meal. But how do you know what food they will like? And how do you know if they'll feel comfortable with food from your country? For example, in Korea, the food can be really spicy. So, how can you host your foreign visitor to dinner without making them uncomfortable or forcing them to eat something that they don't like? So, let's take a look in your book. On page 53, we have a bunch of words describing different kinds of food: broccoli, cabbage, chicken, crab, cucumber. We're going to take these words and match them into the following categories: meat, poultry, fish or seafood, and vegetables or salad. So, go ahead, look in your textbook, and match the words. I've added the word bank in case you don't have your textbook. So go ahead and pause the video if you need it. Great. Let's check your answers. Please take a look at the table and check if you've put all of the words in the correct places. So, meat and poultry. Why are they different? Poultry is any kind of bird that we eat: chicken, duck, or turkey. They're also considered meat, but it's a specific kind of meat. Whereas in the other category, we have the larger animals: lamb, pork, veal, which is a baby cow, or venison. And venison often means deer, but it can mean any kind of wild buck, like impala or something like that. Or buffalo, that's also a kind of venison. In seafood, crab, lobster, prawns, or shrimp. Prawns and shrimp mean basically the same thing. And salmon and tuna. Then vegetables: broccoli, cabbage, cucumber, mushroom, onion, and spinach. Can you think of some other kinds of food? Take a moment in your notebook to try to create more subcategories. Let's take a look at C. We have another group of adjectives, and we need to create word partnerships for these words too. But now, all of these adjectives are related to food or drinks. If you don't have your textbook, you can see the word bank here. Alcohol-free, which we also call virgin. Bottled, draft, this is the British spelling of the word draft. House, medium, mineral, red, rosé, sparkling, still, sweet, tap, vintage, and white. You need to create word partnerships related to drinks using these categories: wine, beer, and water. Please take a moment to complete this exercise. Let's check your answers. Did you get them all right? Please consult the table. There are a lot of kinds of wine, and beer too. All right, the next part in your book, Part D, we're going to use these word partnerships and descriptive adjectives to describe food. So imagine you've brought your foreign visitor to a traditional Korean restaurant, and they've never eaten Korean food before. If you put a plate in front of them, how can you explain the food to them? How can you tell them what it is so that they know what to expect? Some Korean foods can be very strange to Westerners. For example, sannakji is very strange. So, take a look at your book, section D, and you'll see some sentences that can be used to describe food. For example, it's a meat or fish or vegetarian dish. It's a kind of vegetable. It's a kind of dessert. It's quite spicy. It's quite salty or very sour. It's called, and then tell its name, and it tastes a bit like blah blah blah. So, for example, if you're showing someone a piece of sundae and they don't know what that is, you can say, It's called sundae and it tastes a little bit like a pork sausage. I don't know if that's really very true, but it's something that will make your foreign visitor feel more comfortable with the food. So take a moment to read all of these sentences. And then, when you finish, come back to the video and we'll practice describing some food. Alright, now that you've gotten familiar with some of these sentences, let's look at food from my home country. So, this is some famous food from Canada. How can I describe it to a foreign visitor? So let's take a look at the first three foods. Smoked meat sandwich, bagel and lox, and rib roast. In your notebook, I'd like you to write one or two sentences about each food. I'll give you the first sentence just to help you out. A smoked meat sandwich is a meat sandwich. It's quite salty and very savory. We usually eat it with a pickle and French fries. It's a classic dish from Montreal, my hometown. Okay, so I gave you a few more than just two sentences. Go ahead and describe the other two dishes. Okay, now that you've had some practice, why don't you think about a food from your country? How would you describe it to a foreign visitor? So here we have some foods from Hong Kong or China, which is the other country in my family. So how would you describe this food? This is Peking duck. You might say it's a poultry dish made with duck and hoisin sauce. What is this? It's a noodle dish made with many ingredients like blah blah blah. And finally, it's a tofu dish, but you can add other things like blah blah blah. So in your notebook, pick one food from your home country and write a description all by yourself. Now that you've explained the menu to your foreign visitor, it's time to enjoy your meal at the restaurant. Take a look in your textbook in section E. We have a list of different steps in our restaurant experience. I want you to read each step and then put them in order. Which one is first? Which one is last? Okay, so take a moment and write the numbers in the correct order. Let's check your answers. Number 1, we need to book a table or make a reservation. This is especially important for a business lunch or dinner. If we don't make a reservation, you run the risk of arriving at the restaurant and finding out that there are no tables left. If this happens, you'll give the impression of being disorganized or not very good at managing your time. So always book a reservation before a business lunch or dinner. This is especially important if you have a large group, say 5 people or more. Next, we need to look at the menu. This is a time when you would explain the menu items like you did in our previous exercise. Then, order a starter or an appetizer. This is a nice little introduction to our dinner. It gives you something to eat so people aren't too hungry, but you can start your conversation without getting too busy with the main meal. Next, have an aperitif. What is this? We also call it a pre-dinner drink. This is a light cocktail that you can drink and start to feel a little bit more comfortable with the meal, and you can continue your conversation. Next, we have the main course. Try to pick something that's easy to eat and not too messy. You don't want to eat spaghetti and then get spaghetti sauce all over your business suit. Next, we have dessert. And again, pick something easy to eat, maybe something that isn't too heavy so you don't feel too full. Next, ask for the bill or the check. And of course, don't forget to leave a tip. This is really important when you're visiting a Western country. Especially in countries like the United States, people really depend on the tips to earn a livable wage. For example, in America, many servers only earn $2 an hour, and without a tip, they can't survive. And it's considered extremely rude if you forget to tip. I have had experiences in a restaurant where a Korean couple next to me didn't tip the waitress. She got extremely mad and started yelling at them. She stepped over the line and shouldn't have acted so rude, and I felt a little sorry for the Korean couple because they just didn't know about tipping culture. It's not the same in Korea. So before you go to a Western country, make sure you read about the tipping rules in that country and be prepared to spend a little extra money at the end of a meal. All right, let's get ready for the first listening part. In this listening file, you're going to hear part of an interview. Please listen carefully and then answer the following three questions. Number one, which sports are popular? Number two, which sport is not popular and why? And number three, what was the most popular musical? Remember, all of the audio files are available on YSEC. If you do not have a textbook, you can listen to the audio files on YSEC and then return to the PowerPoint and look at this slide as a reference for the exercise. Let's check your answers. Number one, which sports are popular? Horse racing is very successful. Football, motor racing works well, etc. Which one is not popular and why? Cricket is not the most popular because the rules are fairly complicated. Also, cricket games can last a very, very long time, sometimes more than one day. What was the most popular musical? The answer was Phantom of the Opera. All right. Now let's listen to the next part. In the second part, we have just one question. What is surprising about how the financial sector has reacted to the latest recession? Please listen and then come back to answer this question. Let's check your answers. If you look below, you can see an excerpt of the listening file that we just listened to. In this part of the interview, he talked about how even though the financial sector had faced a bit of a downturn, it was surprising that they didn't reduce the quality of their product. Instead, they reduced their budget. So, perhaps surprisingly, they have not gone for a cheaper product, but just taken fewer people to the expensive product. Listening Part C. Please take a moment to listen to the third part of the interview. Then, use that information to fill in the blanks. What makes a corporate event successful? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's check your answers. Number one, you must identify your aim. You need to have a clear purpose, one for you to be able to plan the event well, but also for your guests to understand exactly why they are there and what they are supposed to accomplish. Number two, you must plan some backups, for example, umbrellas. You want to be prepared for every bad situation. Otherwise, it's an invitation for chaos and disorganization. Number three, when you're catering, you must have a high standard of food and drink. You might have a wonderful event with great entertainment, but at the end of the night, people will go back to their hotel, call their wives or their husbands and say, "Yeah, but the food wasn't that good." For some reason, it's something that really sticks in people's minds. So don't be cheap and always pick a very high quality meal. Number four, the staff should be of quality and have good training and briefing. You don't want staff who are running around confused or getting in each other's way. Each staff member should have a very clear job, and they should focus on their jobs with efficiency and accuracy. And finally, you should always follow up afterwards. You want to show your clients or customers that you really care about their experience and that you'll put lots of effort into making things comfortable for them and for improving things in the future. You want to show that you are diligent and hardworking. Now let's listen to the final part, and then you will answer 3 questions. Which 2 events were offered together on the same day? How did people travel from London to the first event? And how did people travel from London to the second event? Let's check your answers. Number 1, which 2 events were offered on the same day? The answer is the British Grand Prix and FIFA Soccer World Cup, the final, in Paris. Number 2, how did people travel from London to the first event? Well, they traveled by helicopter. And 3, how did people travel from London to the second event? They traveled by Concorde, or an airplane. Both of these answers are acceptable. Now let's look at E. We aren't going to work in a group just yet because we're online. So, with yourself, or maybe if you have a friend taking this class with you, discuss this question. What event or events would you like to be invited to? Imagine you went to visit another country and they gave you all of these options. Which ones do you think are the most interesting? And also, which ones do you think are the most appropriate for a business outing? Take out your notebook and write your answer. Great work, everyone! Now let's move on to the reading part of our textbook. On page 54 at the very bottom, you'll see some interview questions. And then on page 55, you'll see the responses that were given by 3 people. However, the interview questions are not matched with each response. What I'd like you to do is read all of the responses by these 3 people, Kate, Andrew, and Alex. Then, after you read all of their responses, I want you to take some notes and answer these 2 questions based on your research. Number 1, what is the most effective way of measuring corporate hospitality? And number 2, what are the key elements required to produce successful corporate hospitality? Go ahead, read the interview responses, and come back with your research. When you finish, we'll check your answers. Let's check your answers. A. What is the most effective way of measuring corporate hospitality? In the first question, Kate makes a very important point. She says that we must listen to client satisfaction and happiness. Of course, the number 1 aim of business entertaining is to treat your client or to treat your customer. If you don't put any care to what they want or what they need, then there's no way that your entertaining is going to match up with their desires. At the same time, we need to meet them halfway and choose something that is both available to organize and within budget. Let's look at number 2. What are the key elements required to produce successful hospitality? We need several things. We must listen to the client's needs, as we just said. We must create a memorable and unique experience, and it should be an interactive experience. In question 3, these 3 respondents talked about some interesting entertainment that they experienced from another company. So, in this interview question, they're talking about kind of research that they did when they were a client. What were things that they found really memorable? And they really enjoyed these experiences that were completely different and new and really engaging. So, when you plan your business entertainment, make sure it's something interactive, something unique, and something really special. Next, if possible, try to include some famous people. In question 4, the 3 respondents say that it's not really in their budget, but if it were possible, it would be so engaging. And that's why there are so many charities that have foundation galas that include celebrity guests who come and drum up interest for their cause. If it's possible, there doesn't have to be an A-list celebrity, even a local celebrity or a topical celebrity could be really engaging for your audience. Next, we should have good food and drinks. If you look at question 3, Alex was really fond of the delicious food and unlimited bar, and an open bar is really a big attraction for many clients. So, not only do they need to be entertained and engaged, but they need to be well fed and well supplied with wine and cocktails. All right, let's move on to the next part. We have one more question for you to answer in your notebook. Please read the interviews again and answer this question. What are the biggest challenges or problems in creating corporate hospitality? Take a moment to write your answer, and then we'll check when you get back. All right, let's check your answer. Definitely the biggest challenge is your budget. We always want to do really amazing activities, but sometimes it's just not feasible. How can we strike a balance between a really high quality of entertainment and something that we can afford? This is part of the challenge of planning business entertainment, and it will always be affected by how many clients are coming or the location of your event. So, budget is very important. Next, your client satisfaction. If you're dealing with many clients at once, it will be impossible to make everyone happy. So, try to find something that is appealing to the largest number of people in that group. And if you can, try to make accommodations for people who might have special requirements or special desires. For example, if you are providing food, you must leave some options for people who are vegetarian or perhaps have dietary restrictions due to their religion or their health. Next, we need to balance the client's needs and cost. Nothing turns off a client more than feeling like you are being too cheap to take care of them. You don't want to make them feel like you're just giving them a budget entertainment just to keep them occupied. They want to feel like you really put down a lot of effort into planning something and you put a little bit of sacrifice into it, meaning that you paid a certain amount of money to get something of high quality for them. Next, we need transportation to the event. In the interview, we need to take care that we don't plan something on a bad day that can't be accessed. So in question number 2, who is it? Andrew says, accessible to everyone no matter what their budget is. So we need to have maybe some private shuttles arranged or somewhere accessible by public transit. Not all of your clients will come in with a private limousine. Some of them will be traveling in large numbers and they need to arrive all at the same time. It's your responsibility to arrange travel or ensure that they have other options to take care of themselves. And finally, we should create an event that all clients can enjoy. Nothing that is too intense. For example, if you have clients who are in an older age bracket, they might not be interested in learning how to do a rodeo ride. Or if you have a lot of young clients, they might not necessarily be interested in a very formal type of whining and dining. Maybe they want something with more excitement. Try to pick something in the middle of the road that everyone can enjoy. All right, let's move on to today's grammar. On page 56, you can take a look. Today's grammar point is multi-word verbs. This is related to the adjective partner words that we talked about at the very beginning of the unit. So, at the beginning, we had some adjectives that we paired with words to make a partnership word. They had a strong association with each other. Now we're going to do the same, but with verbs. So let's take a look. A multi-word verb is a combination of a verb and a preposition or an adverb. And you can see two examples here. A verb and a preposition like bring on, bring about, or bring in. In the other table, we have an example of a verb and an adverb. Take up, take down, and take away. With some of these combinations, the multi-word verb creates a kind of new meaning. When that happens, it becomes an idiom. And when we use it this way, we can also call them a phrasal verb. So for example, to break up with someone means to end a relationship. Likewise, if you ask someone out, you're inviting them on a date. So these multi-word verbs are expressions that mean something not literal. These are phrasal verbs. But phrasal verbs are not the only kinds of multi-word verbs. In fact, there are many kinds of multi-word verbs that will be used in different ways. Let's take a look at this example. We have a calendar and we're planning an event. Unfortunately, August is too early for our conference. Let's put it off until October. Put off. To put off something means to delay it. We're going to push it later on the calendar. Put it off. Next. No thanks. I had a job interview and they offered me a job, but I turned down their offer. When you turn something down, it means that you rejected it or you refused. So maybe if you ask someone out, they might turn you down. But on the other hand, maybe you can go out on a date. Our next example, we're going to look at exercise A. On page 56, you can see some multi-word verbs that need to be matched with a question or sentence. So go ahead, take your textbook, and complete the exercise. When you finish, we'll check the answers. Okay, let's check our answers. Number 1, who's going to look after our guests tonight? When we look after someone or something, it means that we take care of them or give them some attention. We often use this multi-word verb when we talk about our clients and also when we talk about children or maybe pets. For example, Grandma will look after the kids today. Number 2, we have 2 hours to look around the city. In this multi-word verb, we have a more literal meaning, so it's not an idiom. To look around a city means to see all of the sights. When you're a tourist, you enjoy looking around and exploring a city or a town. Number 3, we're really looking forward to the Tokyo trip. To look forward means to await with pleasure or anticipation. Imagine you have a calendar and you've penciled in your vacation next week. When you look forward on the calendar, you're just waiting for your vacation to start. You are full of anticipation. Number 4, let's take the clients out to a Chinese restaurant. Take out. Sometimes we use take out to mean food that goes home. If you take a person out, it means that you are entertaining them and inviting them to go somewhere with you. You can take out a client, you can take out a date, and you can take out a friend. You can take them out to a place. Number 5, 70 staff took part in our fundraising events. To take part means to get involved in or to work with something. So, in an entertainment or when you're entertaining in a major event, you need many people to get involved. and you really want your clients to take part in an interactive experience. Number 6, the CEO would like to take up your kind offer. This is the opposite of turn down. So turn down, no thank you. Imagine someone is given a contract, they read it, they turn it down on the table and push it away. No thank you. When you take up, it means you pick it up and you're very interested. You're going to accept an offer. Take up. Number 7, we were delighted that so many sponsors turned up at the event. Now we have the same preposition at the end, or same adverb at the end, but we changed the verb. To turn up means to appear or arrive or come. 8, as we had another engagement, we had to turn down their invitation. We already know that to turn something down is to refuse or reject an offer, or decline. Now that we've had some practice, let's look at exercise B. In this exercise, we need to select the correct multi-word verb. So, we have a little text, which is just a quick email to say thank you for organizing the Monaco Grand Prix hospitality event. Let's take a look at our first choices. If you don't have a textbook, you can look at this PowerPoint to complete this exercise. Okay, let's check the answer to our first sentence. Everyone who took part in the event thoroughly enjoyed looking around the city and the Grand Prix itself. So everyone who was involved in the event enjoyed exploring the city and the Grand Prix. Next sentence. Let's check your answer. Our clients were looked after very well by your events team. They are very thankful for how well you took care of them. Next. I'm afraid I'm going to have to turn down. We can use this sentence, I'm afraid I'm going to have to, if we want to deliver some bad news in a polite way. I'm afraid I'm going to have to turn down your offer of free tickets. However, we would like to take up your offer of organizing our corporate events next year. Remember, turn up means to arrive somewhere. Like, oh, Joe finally turned up at the party. We are all really looking forward to, look forward to await with pleasure or anticipation. Okay, now let's move on to our case study. Last week, we didn't really delve too deeply in the case study. However, this week, we're going to look at it a little bit more closely. This week's case study is a practice to help you think fast, work smart, and especially work together as a team. So, what is our case study about? In this case study, a multinational company called the GFDC is choosing the best location for its next sales conference. They're in the process of planning and trying to make a decision. We're going to use this case study as this week's participation assignment. There are two main parts to your work for this assignment. Number 1, individual preparation, and number 2, group discussion. You will work in assigned groups. How will the groups work? Well, you will be assigned into small teams, and each team will have its own participation forum. Together, you will discuss the case study. All members should be active in the discussion. At the end of the week, I'm going to check your forum and see how many responses each student contributed to this work. This is the first time that we're going to really interact with each other, so please take advantage to ask a lot of questions and really get to know your partners. Each team should have about 3 members, but depending on the number of students in the class, there might be a few groups with just 2 or maybe even 4 members. I will post a list of each team and the members on YSEC, so please go and take a look. Now, step 1, individual preparation. This is basically the introductory textbook work. Oops. So, for your individual preparation, take a look at your case study. Number 1, read the background. This is a summary of what the case study is about and who was involved. Then, listen to the audio file. You can access the audio on YSEC. The track is 160, and in this track, you're going to listen to 2 colleagues who are discussing the planning of the conference. While you listen, I want you to make some notes about the key features that they need at this event. I'll give you a hint, there are 8 key features. So, as you listen, make a list and take notes. Then, after you finish, you can go to your forum. Now it's time to have a group discussion. First, share your notes about the 8 key features. Make sure that you and your team are all on the same page and you know what you need to accomplish. After you share your notes, discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each hotel. And the hotels are here at the bottom of your textbook. So, talk about each one and make a list of pros and cons. Then rank the hotels from 1 to 4. 1 is the best and 4 is the worst. After you make a final decision, I want you to prepare a very, very short presentation. You can work as a group to make a script or divide different parts to each student. Then, I want you to record a little voice note of your presentation. Each student should speak for about 30 seconds to a minute. And you can upload these files individually to your forum. I suggest using your phone or maybe even your laptop. It's very easy to send files. If there's a problem with YSEC and you're unable to send your file directly to the forum, you can send it to me via email. Just include your name and your student number so I know exactly who you are. All right. And that is our participation forum for this week. A very interactive online team case study. Now, before we end the class, it's time for our office culture moment. So, this lecture, we talked a lot about entertaining our clients and setting up a business lunch or business dinner. You've probably seen this scene a lot in movies and TV shows. For example, we have a picture here from The Wolf on Wall Street. And in this scene, Leonardo DiCaprio is invited to hear a job offer and learn more about this potential career. What's interesting about this scene is that the guy on the right, Matthew McConaughey, he represents a complete departure from all of the rules that we learned. So, on the left, Leonardo DiCaprio is very formal and very proper. He follows all of the correct rules. And on the right, we have a wolf on Wall Street. He's a rebel. He does things differently. And this is a part that's really interesting in the movie. He is a really successful business person, but he breaks all of the rules. But in real life, we don't really want to break the rules. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about Western business lunch or dinner etiquette. So when we have a business lunch, there are a few key things we need to remember. Number 1, we should always arrive a little early, 10 to 15 minutes. It's always better to sit at the table and wait there first, so you are very organized and on time. Don't get there too early or it can be awkward if you're just sitting there and drinking wine by yourself. You can bring a book or check emails while you wait. Next, when the person arrives, stand up out of your chair and give them a firm handshake. There is a kind of handshake culture, especially in America. Maybe you've seen videos of Donald Trump with his very strong and aggressive handshake. There's a kind of unspoken rule about how hard to shake a hand. Don't be too soft. You want to move with confidence, give a little squeeze, and when you shake, don't just shake from your wrist. Shake from your shoulder and put a little muscle into it. You want to be strong and confident, but not too pushy or aggressive. Next, limit yourself to one drink or maybe two. You don't want to get too drunk during a business lunch meeting. And unless the person you're with invites you to have another drink, just keep one drink there for courtesy's sake. Next, when you're waiting for your food, you shouldn't eat first. You should wait until everyone has their food, and then you can all start eating at the same time. If you eat first, it's considered a little selfish and rude. Next, if there is a cloth napkin, you should put it on your lap. Usually, if you go to a fine restaurant, you will have a cloth napkin. If it's a paper napkin, simply tuck it a little bit under your plate and don't worry about putting it on your lap. And finally, maintain eye contact. This is really important for Western cultures. If you look away, for Westerners, it's seen as a little bit rude, like maybe you're not paying attention or you're not really very interested. This is completely opposite to East Asian cultures, where it's considered a sign of respect if we don't challenge each other by looking directly in the eyes. I know I've had some Korean coworkers before who felt uncomfortable when I stared at them too much. They thought there was something on their face, and they would ask me what was wrong. But really, I was just listening very, very carefully. So don't forget to look at them. Don't put your eyes down. And don't especially look away somewhere far away in the restaurant. Let's talk about table settings. Maybe it's your first time going to a really fancy restaurant, and now you're confused by all of the different forks and spoons and glasses and knives. How do you use each one, and when are you supposed to use them? There's a really simple rule to remember which ones to use. And the trick is, we always start from the outside and move in. So if you look at this diagram, you can see salad is on the outside. This is our appetizer. And then when we get to the main course, we go further and further in. Usually, if you don't have a salad or maybe you're not eating any seafood, the server will come by and take away the dishes that you don't need anymore. So as the dinner progresses, just continue moving in. Remember, your glasses are always on your right, so don't accidentally take your client's cup. Also, the bread is always on your left. Next, Western culture is very sensitive to the sound of eating. Never slurp or talk with your mouth full, or even just chewing with your mouth open. That is a huge pet peeve for many people in the West. Even though it's very natural and accepted in Korea or in other Asian countries, for example, we can see in Naruto he's slurping his noodles, we definitely shouldn't do that in the West. It would come across as very rude. For example, if you have ever watched How I Met Your Mother, you might know this episode where Ted gets really annoyed by Lily's chewing. And once he brings it up, other people can't stop hearing it, and it's so loud and obnoxious. So this is a very common thing you'll hear people talk about or you'll see on TV, in movies when people are annoyed by each other. Don't chew loudly, don't talk with your mouth full, and never slurp. One more thing. In some cultures, like in Chinese culture, it's very common to lift the bowl to your face and eat directly from the bowl. This is another thing that is not really done in Western culture. Now, calling the server. In the West, we do not have these little doorbells, and I really wish they did because this is one of my favorite things about living in Korea. It's so easy to call a server, and it's usually pretty relaxed. We can just call for a server for help and just tell them very loudly what we want, and it's very efficient and no one gets their feelings hurt. But in Western culture, that's really, really rude. So, how should we call a server if the restaurant is really busy and we really need something soon? First, we should try to put our hands up while making eye contact. This can be a little difficult, and this is what I really hate about eating in a restaurant back home. You have to look for the waiter, and when you see them and they're ready, catch their eye and put your hands up. Sometimes it's hard to catch them at the perfect time, and you have to try many times for it to work. If you can't get their attention silently, then it's acceptable to say, "Excuse me," and hopefully you don't have to shout too loudly. Usually the waiter, if they see you, will nod their head or raise their eyebrow to show that they will come to you soon, but right now they're just a little busy. Things we should never do when calling a server in a Western restaurant. Snapping your fingers. This is considered extremely rude. Never do this to anybody, whether they're your client or your server or even your friend. It will really make them angry. And I've had people do this to me and I instantly felt enraged, and then I had to remind myself it was just a cultural difference. In the West, this is extremely rude and condescending. Another thing you shouldn't do is wave your arm. Waving your arm is a little bit extra, and it's seen as a little bit rude, like you're being too aggressive in trying to get their attention. And for some people, it's seen as a little bit self-centered because the server is very busy and they have many different people that they're trying to help. And if you're waving your arm impatiently, it seems like you want to be served first and you don't care about the other people. So don't wave your arm. Just put your arm up gently and patiently wait your turn. Another thing we shouldn't do is call for the waiter by saying, "Waiter!" I see this all the time in movies, and it's so irritating because people don't really say this. And if they do say it, it's considered kind of rude. Your waiter or server is more than just a waiter. They're a human being. Instead, we should call them Miss or Sir. Or sometimes we can say ma'am. But personally, I think women prefer Miss because ma'am sounds a little bit old. So if you can't get their attention, first put your hand up, then say, "Excuse me." And then the next level up, we say, "Excuse me, miss, miss." Another thing we should never do is tap on the waiter's shoulder or try to grab their sleeve as they're walking by. That's a huge breach of their privacy and it's not acceptable. Okay, now let's talk about making requests. When we're in different kinds of restaurants, we should use different levels of language. Korea has a very clear level of formality. English does too, but we don't really practice it as much in class. So let's talk about it today. If you're in a very fancy restaurant, let's say we have some dark lighting, there is a very well-dressed server, everyone is dressed in a formal business suit or a beautiful dress, and they're drinking red wine. In this kind of restaurant, you're going to use the language, "May I have, please." So let's practice making some requests. Some words will pop up on the side, and I want you to practice saying this sentence. Ready? Number 1. May I have some water, please? May I have some water, please? Good. May I have the menu, please? May I have the menu, please? All right. May I have a napkin, please? May I have a napkin, please? Now, if you're speaking to a British speaker, the intonation might be a little different. I'm Canadian, so I say, "May I have a napkin, please?" If you're British, you might say, "May I have a napkin, please?" May I have a napkin, please? Okay, let's do one more. May I have the bill, please? May I have the bill, please? May I have the bill, please? That's the British way. May I have the bill, please? Okay, now let's go to a slightly more casual restaurant. This is maybe a nice brunch restaurant that's not too fancy. You're wearing your smart casual clothes and you're getting a little more comfortable with your client or your friend. In this situation, we can say, "Could I get blah blah blah, please?" So let's practice. Could I get a refill, please? Especially in America, refills are free, and it's common to ask for as many refills as you want. That can include water, coffee, soda, your juice, even bread. Could I get a refill, please? Let's try the next one. Could I get another fork, please? Could I get another fork, please? Could I get some hot sauce, please? Let's make it a little faster. Could I get some hot sauce, please? Very good. And finally, could I get this to go, please? And usually we point at the food. So why do we ask this? If we have some food that we didn't finish and we want to take it home, we ask, can I get this to go, please? Sometimes people do this with their fingers. Can I get this to go? All right. Or sometimes we say, could I get this wrapped up, please? Could I get this wrapped up? We also call this a doggy bag. Could I get a doggy bag for this? All right. Now, you're finished your meal and you want to ask for the bill. As we discussed before, you should call your waiter's attention by making eye contact and lifting your arm. Usually they're on the other side of the restaurant, so we don't want to shout at them. Instead, make a silent gesture and move your mouth to say check. You don't have to really say it, just make the motion. But it would be so much easier if someone would please send these to Western countries. If you ever grow up and make your own business and you are looking for something to export out of Korea, please send these to Canada and America because that would be so great. It's such a struggle to get the waiter's attention sometimes. Okay, moving on. We need to pay the bill and we need to tip. Tipping is not done in Korea, but it's really important to remember about when you're traveling in a Western country. But not all Western countries have the same tipping rules, so it can be really confusing. So, let's say for example, when the bill comes, we don't know exactly who should pay or how we should split the bill. For example, in Chinese culture, it's expected to fight over the bill. If you don't strongly insist on paying, it's considered rude. In my family, when they fight for the bill, sometimes it looks like they're going to punch each other. And sometimes one person pretends to go to the bathroom and then they try to pay the bill sneakily and the other person has to catch them paying at the counter and then they start to yell at each other at the counter and then they're both pushing the server and trying to pay at the same time. This is really common in some East Asian cultures. In Western culture, it doesn't get so aggressive when you pay the bill. In Western culture, the host is expected to pay. So, if you are the one who invited a client, you should pay. However, if someone invited you, you should politely offer to pay just once and then thank them. This is just a courtesy to be polite. We're usually expecting them to pay, right? But we just want to show that at least we're willing to offer. So let's practice a dialogue and in this situation, the bill has come to the table. First, I'll play the man and you play the woman who is invited to dinner. So, I will be the host. The bill has come to the table, and I reach for it from the server. I'll get this. Please, I insist. Okay, very simple and very polite way to offer to pay and also insist that you pay. Now let's flip the positions. You're going to read the men's lines, and I'm going to be your guest or your client. Okay, ready? Here comes the bill. And go. No, let me pay. Thanks, that's really kind of you. Okay, perfect. So, whenever you want to pay the bill, just remember this sentence. I'll get this. How about Dutch pay? Maybe you've experienced Dutch pay with some of your foreign friends already as a student. Dutch pay is something that we usually do with close friends and sometimes family, like your brother or sister. And there are different rules for Dutch pay. If you want to suggest Dutch pay, you might ask a question like, "Wanna go Dutch?" And the other person might say, "Yeah, let's split the bill." But even when you split the bill, there are two main ways of splitting the bill. One is very equal. You might say, "Let's split it down the middle." Just take the total and divide it in 2 or 3 or 4 and make everyone pay an equal amount. The other way of paying separately is to pay according to what you ordered. This is a little bit more of a hassle, but it is more fair. For example, maybe one friend drank a lot of wine and ate a really expensive dish, and another friend is on a tighter budget, so they ate a small salad and something really small and affordable. It wouldn't be fair to make one person pay for the other person's extravagant meal. So, when you go for a meal with a friend and they want to split the bill, always decide which way you want to split the bill. In a business lunch or dinner, we will never use Dutch pay. That's considered a little bit tacky and unprofessional. But the reason why we're talking about it today is, well, one, it's always good to know about, and two, usually when you finish your meal at a restaurant, the server will offer for you to pay together or separately. So, how can we understand the server's question? Usually at the end of the meal, the server will ask, "Will that be together or separate?" This is an offer for you to pay together or Dutch pay. They might also say, "Can I put that on one bill for you?" "Can I put that on one bill for you?" means, are you going to pay this all together? If you are asked this question and you are hosting a client, that is the time for you to say yes, and then give them your card. Or yes, and you can give that bill to me. So let's practice. "Can I put that on one bill for you?" "Yes, please bring that bill to me." Okay, so now we've sorted out the situation of who will pay at the end of the dinner. Now, we know we need to pay for all of our food and drink, but what about tipping? In Europe, tipping is a very small amount, just about 5% or whatever change you might have in your wallet. Sometimes you just round up the amount. If you have a $21 meal, you might put $25 on the table and just leave it like that. However, in North America and some other countries, like in Australia and in some parts of South America, tipping is a much bigger percentage. And especially in North America, servers are very sensitive about their tips because they really rely on the tips to live their life. So, how do you decide what percentage to tip someone? In North America, there are many different rules for each type of server, whether it's someone in a restaurant, someone who cuts your hair, someone who helps you in a hotel or in a to-go restaurant, and or baristas, and that can get very confusing. Let's just focus on restaurant situations. If you went to a fine dining restaurant and your server gave you poor service, you're going to give them 10%. For average service, give 15. And 15% is a very good default percentage to give. If they gave great service, give 20% or even more, like 25%. That is extremely generous, and obviously it's optional. If you're in a business lunch or dinner, it's considered tacky and rude if you give a low tip, because usually the dinner is being paid for by your company. So unless you want to specifically be rude to the server, you should give a nice tip, at least 15%. I think 20% is easier to calculate mentally. You just take the total, divide it by 5, and it's very hard for people to be offended by a good tip. So I always like to overtip a little bit. I also understand the server situation, and I never want to make them feel like they're unappreciated for their work. So I always try to give 20% when I am able to do that. Now let's talk about cash tips. If you pay a tip on your credit card, that's really easy. You just push the button that you want, you write it on the paper, on the receipt, and that's easy peasy. If you have a tip in cash, you can leave it on the table and then just walk away. Put it under your plate or next to your cup where your server can find it, and don't worry about giving it to them in person. If you really liked the server and they did a really wonderful job, especially in a very high-class restaurant, then yes, you will give your tip to them personally. That is a really kind gesture and it shows a lot of respect for your server. If you're in a more casual restaurant, however, you don't need to do that. Let's say you went to a casual brunch restaurant. If you're paying in cash, you can leave the whole bill and the tip on the table and then just leave. The servers will trust you to just pay what you owe. When I went back to North America for the first time after living in Korea for a few years, this felt really weird. It felt a little bit strange, like someone might just steal the money, or how do they know that you really paid the honest amount? But that's something very common in the culture there. So just leave the money on the table and then walk away, and the server will take care of the rest. All right, now that's the end of our week's lecture. I hope you really enjoyed it, and please don't forget to go on WISEC and complete your participation forum. Thank you, and have a great week.